Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for your patience and waiting us for everything to come together. Well, tonight we have a very exciting program for a very exciting cause. We are representing the Simsbury Spirit Council as well as the Simsbury Public Library, and just with the town of Simsbury. There's a lot happening today, and for the first time for as a town organization, the town of Simsbury is celebrating and recognizing Juneteenth Day. And so, and everything else that's happened today in recognition that just today, President Biden has signed into law that now Juneteenth Day is now a national federal holiday. So this is a lot, going on today. That's right. You could definitely give a clap, hand snap, however you like to do it. But so it's a lot going on today. And so there's a lot to celebrate. There's still a lot of work to do, but sometimes you just really have to sit down and, and celebrate a victory. You have to celebrate progress. And that's exactly what we're able to do today. Obviously through a lot of pain, obviously through a lot of struggle, growth does occur. A lot of things do happen after the rain and such. And that's what we're seeing now that, through the years of much protest, the years of much as what we call resiliency, we're able to see, fruit of some of that labor happening today. So not just for the town or not just for the state, but it's happening for the entire country. And so that's what we wanted to do this evening is, take the time out to celebrate Juneteenth Day. And the title of our program is A Legacy of Resilience. And so, there's a timeline to all this. There's a lot of struggle to all this. There's a lot of perseverance to all this, a lot of sacrifice to all this, as well as an abundance of resilience. And so, and that's what we're looking at, as a title for tonight's event. As we're celebrating Juneteenth Day, we're also celebrating all those who have come before us. We're celebrating all those who have literally, put their life on the line in order for us to get to this day today, where it has now been signed into law that Juneteenth Day will now be a federal holiday. And so it's just been the first federal holiday that's been instated, if I'm not mistaken, since Martin Luther King Jr. as we celebrate his birthday. And so, the last two federal holidays are an acknowledgement, one of a great American leader, a civil rights leader, a just man who was definitely desires for our country to move forward. And now we're also the newest one is in celebration of Juneteenth Day. So this is exciting. My name is Nkosi Lee. Kind of a moderator, part of the program, but we're just here to have a good time and do all of this together. So I'm not gonna hold you too much longer because we do have a program that we want to get to. And so, this is our opening. I don't know who else we have from the Spirit Council here. I see Nicole, Kodak is here. Yep, wave your hand, Nicole. Lloyd Huey, wave your hand, Lloyd. Tanisha, I see you up here as well. That's right. And so we're all, putting some time in. I can't see the rest of the screen. So if anyone else is here, apologize if I cannot see your face at this time. But thank you for taking the time out for joining us tonight. So the first thing we're gonna do is we have a singer, Timothy Hagan, who's joining us, lending us his talent, his time, and he's gonna sing the Negro National Anthem. So if you could, even from the comfort of your own home, if you can stand while this is being sung, it'd be greatly appreciated. If you could see in your chat feature, there's a file there for Lift Every Voice and Sing if you want to follow along with the words. If you don't know it while Timothy is singing, you can do that as well. But please just give our undivided attention to Timothy Hagan, who's going to sing. And then from there, we're going to hear a video from the Simsbury High School Gospel Choir as well. So there's a huge spiritual element, and there's just a lot of excitement and celebration. So Timothy, the floor is yours.
Hi, hello everyone. My name is Timothy, and today I'll be singing Lift Every Voice and Sing. Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening sky. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun, let us march on till victory is won. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the days when hope unborn had died. Yet with the steady beat, have not our weary feet come to the place for which our Father sighed. We have come over a way that with tears have been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered. Out from the gloomy past, till now we stand at last, where the white gleam of our bright star is cast. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, thou who hast brought us thus far on the way, thou who hast by thy might led us into the light, keep us forever in the path, we pray. Lest our feet stray from the places, our God, where we've met thee, lest our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget thee. Yeah. Shadowed beneath thy hand, may we forever stand true to our God, true to our native land.
All All right.
All right.
Thank you, Timothy. Oh man. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, that was beautiful. Thank you. And you know it's real when it's done a cappella. So thank you, so much. That was awesome. And wow, yes, thank you so much. And thank you for just lending your talent, lending your voice, lending your heart, your soul, and your spirit, Timothy. And just yes, what a way to open up, our celebration this evening. So thank you for opening that door for us. And I know just being able to follow that, everything else will be just fine. So thank you again, Timothy. It's greatly appreciated. That was awesome. Thank you so much. Oh man, yes, thank you. All right. So moving along, next we have a video that is done. This is from the Simsbury High School Gospel Choir. And so they're, we'll put that out as well. Yes, that was awesome, Julietta, you're correct. Thank you, yes, all right, so yes, let's, so next, yes, so that'll be the next portion of the program. Yeah, there's no sound.
Yeah, it looks like we might be having an audio issue, so let's try. One moment. You are important to me. I need you to survive. I need you. You need me. We're all a part of God's body. Stand with me. Agree with me. We're all a part of God's body. It is His will that every need be supplied. You are important to me. I need you to survive. You are important to me. I need you to survive. I pray for you. You pray for me. I love you. I need you to survive. I won't harm you with words from my mouth. I love you. I need you to survive. I pray for you. You pray for me. I love you. I need you to. It looks like we might have some minor technical difficulties, but I'm not sure where she went. So in case we might want to just move to the next piece, or we can replay the video, whatever you prefer.
Okay, well, if the video is is all set to go, we could definitely hear that.
I need you, you need me. We're all a part of God's body. Stand with me, agree with me. We're all a part of God's body. It is His will that every need be supplied. You are important to me. I need you to survive. You are important to me. I need you to survive. I need you, you need me. We're all a part of God's body. Stand with me, agree with me. We're all a part of God's body. It is His will that every need be supplied. You are important to me. I need you to survive.
Well, we thank you for the Simsbury High School Gospel Choir for allowing us to play the ensemble that they performed for the Dr. Martin Luther King holiday. And so you see the power of music in our first two, pieces of our celebration. One would be a spiritual, a poem, but once sung, you could feel the power that is in that. And then you hear a song which is a little more contemporary, but nevertheless, still speaking of the power of prayer, still speaking of the power of community, and still speaking of the power of fellowship and the necessity for all of us to be able to get together, to be able to support one another, to be able to lift each other up. And so that's what that's all about. I pray for you, you pray for me. I love you, I need you to survive, so that's it. And we can pray for one another, then we know our hearts are in the right place for each other as well. And so it continues to be a major part of the legacy that we're celebrating is a spiritual legacy as well. And so we could see that coming forth through Lift Every Voice and Sing. And we also hear it in the song, I Need You to Survive. So we thank again the Simsbury High School Gospel Choir for allowing us to play that piece tonight. All right, so we're gonna keep moving forward. We're gonna have a significance and reflection from a major part of the Simsbury community, very active, very vocal, and just very important, part of the glue of the fabric, I believe that continues to put to help keep various components of the town together. And so that being said, we are going to welcome Deacon Art Miller, and he's going to speak to us about the significance and reflection of Juneteenth Day. So thank you for joining us, Deacon Arthur Miller.
Hey, Brother Nkosi, how are you? Do you want me to speak before this person comes that you were talking about?
Yes, please. You can't deflect. You can't deflect that if you wanted to, Deacon Miller. You cannot.
Oh man!
Not if you wanted to. The truth speaks for itself, Deacon Miller. We don't have to make up any stories about you.
Well, I have come to recognize how blessed I am, and I will tell you the truth. I reluctantly came to Simsbury. They literally had to harness me, kicking and screaming to come to Simsbury because I didn't feel that there would be a welcome mat put out. And that's just the truth, brother. And I will tell you, over the last 11 years, I have grown to love the folks I've met, the audacity to confront truth. And that includes truths that are not very, very lovely. And it continues to be in that incredible process of accepting, recognizing, and realizing that there is so much more, so much greater in a diverse community than there is in a monolithic one. And that the truth of it is we are all much better simply because we are all different. Because I swear to you, I don't want a whole bunch of Deacon Art Millers running around, because that would be dangerous, brother. But together, man, who you are and who everyone on this call is, we can create so much more than we could ever do on our own. There's the old African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together.
That's right.
And that's what I think this community can do, is about the business of trying to do. And this embracing of Juneteenth that was done today, my mother would be jumping up and down and hallelujah and all over the place, because what it truly is saying to every single one of us, because this is not a Black holiday. This is an American holiday. It is an American in the true sense of the word. You know, it's been a long time, even though I fought during Vietnam, and my son was in the Marines for years. My grandfather, my great-great-grandfather, all were in the service for this nation. But I never, ever felt truly like I was an American. I was always a hyphenated American, a Black American, an African American, a Negro American, a colored American. But this holiday tells us that we are Americans, because it is on this day, 156 years ago, when the country, not even willingly, but unwillingly, came to the realization that nobody is free unless we are all free. And we still marching towards that day. So other than that, I'm not excited about this, but I'm going to tell you this. I will now begin to celebrate the 4th of July, because I never did before.
All right. Well, that's Independence Day. You know, July 4th. I think it was Frederick Douglass. They had him to give a speech on the 4th of July, and he came out with what to a slave is the 4th of July.
Amen.
And so he knew it. He said, "How you asking me to celebrate the 4th of July when millions of my brothers and sisters are in bondage?" You know, and so I think now when you're saying you could celebrate it because it speaks to the point of freedom. You know, it speaks to the point of opportunity. You know, and again, you know, our title is a legacy of resilience, and so it also speaks to the resilience, you know, that has been just exuded, you know, over, you know, of many centuries, you know, for us to be able to sit here at this point, like you say, and to be able to celebrate Juneteenth Day and all the accomplishments, you know, that have happened, you know,
Yes.
the failures, the successes that have happened, but we're able to be in a place of reflection. We're able to stand in a place of humility. We're able to stand in a place of thanksgiving. We're able to stand in a place of joy, you know, as we could look back and you could, without having to experience everything, but having an understanding of things that have occurred. And now to be able to sit here today and now see as a national holiday that America unanimously accepted in the United States Senate in 2021, with all the shenanigans that are going on in that body of politics, and nearly unanimous in the House of Representatives. And so, yeah, both sides of the aisle, all shades of colors, different religions, gender, sexual orientation, has all come together to put into law, to put into practice, you know, this day today. And so, yeah, so it's right to be able to celebrate. You can say as an African American, as an American, however you know, it's
absolutely.
It's a true time to be able to celebrate in the midst of everything else that is happening. You still have to be able to take the time out to celebrate a victory.
Absolutely.
Victory.
You know, there's one thing that I'd like to respond on, and that's I'm tired of being resilient.
Oh boy.
You know, we as a people don't have to. You know, I'm not going to be resilient anymore. I'm not going to let stuff just roll off my shoulders anymore.
Right.
I'm not going to be resilient and have to take, you know, insult and microaggressions, because I'm tired of being resilient. And so I'm putting down resilience and demanding the truth of my birthright. And that's also something that we need to recognize, you know, because some folk are saying, as you've implied, Nkosi, that, you know, well, it's not done yet. No, it's not, but I'm going to celebrate, man. It's time for us to celebrate, because we have too many times when we don't celebrate, when things we're so enamored and embraced on the hardships of what has happened. We need to recognize that every once in a while, man, we need to celebrate. Because without celebrating, how are we going to be able to look forward to tomorrow? When we don't count those moments of hope, those seconds of joy, to know that this too can happen. So this is one of those check marks on the truth of who we are going to become. And so I was alive when Juneteenth came about.
That's right.
And I'm celebrating that. And, you know, I know that Hallmark and all those other people are going to come out with all these Juneteenth cards, but, you know, so I know they celebrating too.
Yeah,
You know, there's going to be a whole bunch of jobs that are going to be had.
That's
Even
right.
Tanisha's going to have a job doing something like that. Ain't that right, Tanisha? I mean, we all, and how many, you know, that's going to be the hallmark. How many Juneteenth cards did you send out? Do you give gifts on Juneteenth? Or what do you do on Juneteenth? You have pumpkins. I don't know. Maybe Rick Collins, maybe he'll write a book about it. We don't know. So I mean, that's, you know, maybe it'll be Julietta, because I think I see a writer in her, you know, because you never know. But then we always have that Dr. Okabar, who shows up on the scene, who is a brilliant man, and he, even though he's my cousin, everybody thinks he's my nephew. The truth is, he's probably more like a son to me, who I love dearly. So I don't want to take up any more of his time, because he is really a brilliant professor at the University of Connecticut. He's a Harvard fellow, is the preeminent scholar on the Black Panthers in the United States. So I know I'm not supposed to introduce him, but I took whoever's person's place was supposed to do that, because that's my cousin.
All right.
Yeah, ain't that right, Margaret?
Yes, you definitely have the right to be able to do that. So thank you, Dr. Akbar, for joining us tonight. And so the floor is yours, you know, to speak on the history and the significance of Juneteenth Day. So thank you again for joining us.
Thank you so much. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. And it's always tough to follow Uncle Art / cousin here. You know, I've been here in Connecticut since '97, and ever since my arrival, we've crossed social circles and with our friends, and people will hear that he's my cousin and immediately will adjust it in their heads so he's my uncle. And but over those last 24 years or so, he's become more like a father to me. So I'm very, very grateful to be in his sphere, and at home for Thanksgiving, Easter, and on these Zoom calls. So it's always good. And I'm very, very pleased. Thanks a lot, Nicole and other organizers, for inviting me out. And this is a great opportunity to learn more about something that's such a timely thing. Juneteenth, of course, today I got a chance to see the signing, and a friend texted me and told me to go to CNN and actually watch this. So historical event. And as we all know, there are very, very few federal holidays, and that in our lifetime, the last one was over a generation ago, 40 years ago. And so this is quite exciting. The history, one of the things I find kind of fascinating about Juneteenth is that Art will tell you that I'm from Chicago, and I was born in Chicago, and my family, they see Chicagoans almost like being an ethnicity. And I left Chicago in first grade. I was raised first grade through high school in California, in LA. And so I don't claim to be a Chicagoan, since I've spent all 12 years of my schooling in LA before I went up to college. But Art would say I'm a self-hating Chicagoan. I'm not a self-hating Chicagoan, but being raised in California, most African Americans in California have roots that go to two states, Texas and Louisiana. And so in LA growing up, I always heard about Juneteenth. And, you know, years before I took courses in college, I heard that this was a point when enslaved people in Texas got their freedom, when the news of the Emancipation Proclamation made its way, and that even many websites will say that it took a long time for news to travel back then, and 2 years later, people, slaves in Texas found out they were free and all that. And that's a myth, and it's amazing how common that myth is, and it sort of circulates. I think everyone on this call, everyone here knows that it didn't take 2 years for news to travel around the country. It didn't take 2 years for people to know that Abraham Lincoln was running for president in 1860 in Texas. It didn't take 2 years for people in Texas to know that the Civil War started and there was a secession movement underway, right? It didn't take 2 years for people to know that some baseball team won a game, right? So there was a telegraph, and people had trains, and it didn't take 2 years to even walk from DC to Texas, right? And so it's amazing that people keep saying that it took 2 years. And so when I think about starting from the myths that we've heard about Juneteenth, it's really kind of interesting to think about how emancipation itself unfolded. And itself, there's a narrative about a lot of myth, a lot of confusion, and it's hard to start with one particular story, but if I will, and I'm a professor, so I'm long-winded, so I will be very short. I'll try my best to keep it short and succinct. The war began, and we all know that there are debates, historians who are well-regarded, who are super smart, have long engaged in debate with themselves over historical phenomena, right? So you've always had historians get involved in these debates. And so lay people oftentimes will hear that, oh, well, the cause of the Civil War was this or was that. And but there's something we call a master narrative, a general consensus around historical phenomena, right? So the master narrative, or what we call the grand narrative, is what historians have built consensus around how we interpret certain historical events. And so the master narrative right now, and there's no equivocation on this, but the Civil War started because of Southern states, and looking at their articles of secession, they're very clear. South Carolina, when this is seceded in December of 1860, a month after Abraham Lincoln was elected president, South Carolina said that they did not want their beloved institution of slavery be destroyed by this, what they called a Black Republican abolitionist. And Lincoln told everyone, he's, I'm not an abolitionist, but they didn't believe him, and they insisted that he would destroy slavery. 5 other states followed suit quickly thereafter. These 6 states were the states that had the highest percentage of enslaved people. And they said, Mississippi was very clear, Arkansas was very clear, that we are defending our beloved institution of slavery. We do not want it destroyed. We will die to defend it. We will commit treason to defend it, right? So we will pick up guns and fight against our country to defend it, right? We will commit treason. So when all this was going on, there was an effort by Congressman. Lincoln was not inaugurated until March of '61, and we have inauguration in January now, but back then. So in March, there were people who were saying, what do we do to prevent civil war? So people actually proposed a 13th Amendment. And as the numbers have gone in the Constitution, 13th Amendment at that point in March of 1861, this amendment would have been to preserve slavery forever, that it cannot be outlawed in the United States. And this was this last-ditch effort to avoid civil war. This 13th Amendment was proposed, and they asked Lincoln before he took the oath of office, they said, Lincoln, everyone says you're an abolitionist. He's like, no, I'm not an abolitionist. I'm not. I don't keep saying this. I'm anti-slavery Republican, but I'm not an abolitionist, meaning that I don't want to see slavery expanded from where it is. And they said, if you're okay, are you willing to support the 13th Amendment that will protect slavery in perpetuity? He said, yes, I will do it because I want to avoid civil war. The reason the 13th Amendment was not passed in March of 1861 was that Southern states had seceded already, and there were not enough members of Congress to support it. They already left Congress. Had they been there, there would have been a law that they could not end slavery, right? This is how hardcore people were trying to avoid civil war, but how committed people were to maintain the institution of slavery, right? So the war began, of course, Sumter, spring of 1861, and that summer, and this is really important, you all, that summer there was a guy, General John Fremont, and I could have a whole lecture on Fremont, who's a fascinating character. Fremont was a general who oversaw the military district in Missouri, and there were Confederate sympathizers. There were border states that did not secede but still practiced slavery. Missouri was one of them, and he oversaw this region. There were people who were supporting the Confederacy, although Missouri was a Union state. Fremont said, if I catch you, any of you no good, filthy Confederate sympathizers out here helping these traitors, I will not only confiscate all your property, your home, I'll also free all the people you enslaved. I've issued my Emancipation Proclamation. That was the summer of 1861. Lincoln went crazy. Lincoln contacted Fremont and said, Fremont, you're wild out here. We can't have this Emancipation Proclamation. If you do this, not only will we lose Missouri, we'll lose Kentucky, we'll lose West Virginia, we'll lose all the border states, and we can't do this. And he made it very clear. Lincoln wrote a letter, and he said, this is a famous quote where he said that, my ambition, I'm paraphrasing him here, but my ambition is not to end slavery or preserve slavery, but to preserve the Union. If I could do it with slavery intact, I will. If I could do it by destroying slavery, I will. But my goal is to maintain the Union, right? It's very clear. And that was 1861. A year later, skipping through a lot of things, a year later, he comes together with his cabinet in August, September. He tells them privately that I've come up with my own Emancipation Proclamation. What I'm going to do, I'm going to give it to the Confederates and tell them that you can actually end this war right now, right? We've been going to this war. Hundreds of thousands of people have died. We disrupted all these lives. This is horrible, all the misery and suffering. We can end this. We will actually pay you money like we did in Washington, D.C. So in Washington, D.C., there were all these people who were enslaved. And Washington, D.C. in 1862 said, we will actually pay enslavers to free people in Washington, D.C. So if you enslave a little child or a woman, a grown or a man that's grown, come to us, we'll give you up to $300 and that person can be free. And they outlawed slavery and paid all their enslavers like the British did. So Lincoln went to the South and said, hey guys, you know, this war is terrible. Jefferson Davis, man, it'd be great if you guys would just like stop fighting and then I'll pay you all this stuff so you can let all these slaves go. And Jefferson Davis, like, you know, he was hostile. They rejected the idea. The Confederates refused. They said, Lincoln, you're a coward. We're going to beat you guys. We're going to win this war and we're going to have slavery forever. And Lincoln said, okay, think about it. And then if you don't do it, then this is off the table. You know, we're not going to give you any money. And then January 1st, they can be free anyway. And the Confederates said, Lincoln, you're a clown. You're not our president. You have no authority over us. Our president is Jefferson Davis. We have our own Congress, our own money. Look at my dollar bill. This is me, right? This is not you. This is not George. This is me on the dollar bill, right? And so these guys were saying that you have no authority here. And so your little proclamations don't mean anything. January 1st, 1863, 4 million people were enslaved the day before. There were 4 million people enslaved the next day, right? So it didn't end slavery. And so a lot of my students are often conflicted. They're like, but Professor Ogbar, I've always heard that the Emancipation Proclamation ended slavery. I'm like, well, actually, you've heard it, but you've never seen it written in any historical book. Like, there's never a textbook that has ever said, you've never seen this, a book written by a historian saying that the Emancipation Proclamation ended slavery. But you just hear it sort of in the zeitgeist, right? People just sort of traffic in the language of this all the time, and we sort of do it, we just sort of believe it, right? Which is really kind of strange. So from this point on, you will notice that you will never see a historian actually say this, right? You'll just hear people make references to it all the time. And I think this is why Juneteenth thing gets a little confusing, because people are like, it took 2 years for the information to get to the, and then so the assumption is that if Lincoln could just say the Emancipation Proclamation, now people are all free, he very well could have said to all the Confederates, I'm now president of the United States, I'll declare the war over. And they're like, oh, he just said the war is over. Okay, let's go home and go to sleep. But he had no authority, right? So if he had no authority to end the war, he had no authority to free all these people. And even if those people wanted to be free, which they wanted to be free before the Emancipation Proclamation, it didn't take his proclamation want people to be free, for people wanted to be free. So they had no power to do it on December 31st, nor did they have on January 1st. So when we get to what happened in Texas in June of 1865, the war came to an end in April in some way. We often hear this at Appomattox with Robert E. Lee capitulating to Grant, but there were skirmishes throughout. And all of us here, I suspect all of us, except for the little baby in Melissa's lap, I suspect that all of us here have heard stories of Japanese fighters after Hiroshima and Nagasaki still fighting in islands in the South Pacific, right? There were still these people who didn't get the news that the war was over. And so whenever you have far-flung wars, at the armistice, you rarely have an immediate succession of fighting, right? So there were people throughout in the far-flung parts of the United States that were still engaged in battles and skirmishes for weeks after Appomattox, right? And the cases where people who were enslavers throughout the South, not just Texas, but throughout the South, had great contempt for Lincoln, great contempt for the Union Army, and great contempt for the idea of abolition. And unless there was any kind of authority to enforce the law, they would maintain slavery. And this is what happened throughout the South, not just Texas. But there was a huge swath of Texas, because it was the far west, the farthest west where slavery was legal. You have these huge parts of the state where people did exactly that. And until Union authority got there in June, and you have General Granger, he comes out there, he's like, what the hell's going on here? He's like, you know, he issues this Order number 3. It was called General Order number 3. And it's really cool to look at it. You could go to Wikipedia. It's like 3 sentences. And it's very simple. It's like, slavery's over. All the people were enslaved. You could negotiate wages with your enslavers. And y'all don't congregate around military bases. That's it. And that was it. It was like real simple, right? And so what we have there is this sort of the affirmation of Union authority, not so much a long time before people got the news or the people just, I don't know, I really don't understand otherwise, but it's really Confederate recalcitrance that why it took so long. I think and I don't want to take anything away from the importance of it, right? The important narrative here is that you have this moment when months after the war, these people, of course, get their freedom. But just to be very clear, there were thousands of people who were still enslaved throughout the United States and border states like Kentucky and like Missouri until December, because it wasn't the Emancipation Proclamation that ended slavery, but it was the 13th Amendment to the Constitution, the real 13th Amendment, not the proposed one that would protect slavery. And so the 13th Amendment to the Constitution passed after Lincoln was already killed in December of 1865, made it illegal to enslave people in the United States. And although for those here who are African Americans, it's very common, virtually every Black person I know, African American, virtually every African American I know will claim their grandmama is part Indian. Indians and the Indian Territory maintained slavery even until 1866. And this is Indian Territory, quasi under the control of the United States. And it wasn't until 1866 that slavery was actually outlawed there. So we actually have the 13th Amendment months after Juneteenth. And then, of course, Indian Territory, 1866, the following year, where slavery in North America is finally. Mexico outlawed slavery long before. Canada outlawed slavery long before. So the last remnants of slavery in North America were in Indian Territory, later Oklahoma, a year after Juneteenth. So Juneteenth is a real complicated history to how we understand emancipation, a very complicated history to how we understand the end of slavery. And I think in many ways, it illustrates just how haphazard, if you will, and how contested notions of freedom are in the United States. I mean, the history of the United States is a history of people who've been pushing for democracy and pushing against democracy, pushing for freedom and pushing against freedom. We have sort of not a linear, neat process where freedom has unfolded, but a very contested process. We have certain groups that become, that get enfranchised. And then over time, we have constrictions on those attempts to enfranchise groups. Whether we're looking at class, race, and gender, there are all these complex narratives. And that's what we have with the 13th Amendment and, of course, Juneteenth. I know this is not probably the moment, but if there are any questions, I'm not sure if this is a moment where people have questions, but thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Akbar, for the history, dispelling some and shedding light on other parts as well. So we thank you for that. I guess I would have a question to ask if no one else does while we have you here. And not just perhaps when you mentioned Oklahoma, and then also just speaking of Tulsa. And so is there a relation there then for the Black Township, perhaps like what parts of Tulsa and the relation with the slaves that were there then in Indian country and being able to form some of these Black towns? Is there a connection with that?
Yes, there is. So one of the things that came out of Indian Territory in 1866 was an actual process of some measure of reparations. Now, I'm not a specialist in this, but my understanding is that unlike it, so many people have heard the story of 40 acres and a mule being promised to formerly enslaved people in the United States. So that was Special Field Order number 15 by General William Sherman in Georgia. And it wasn't something that the federal government offered everyone across the United States, but was offered along the coast between Georgia and Florida. And there were people who got lands, and those lands were taken away. In Indian Territory, when people were freed from Indians, they actually got plots of land, acres of land, as recompense for intergenerational torture, rape, and enslavement and brutalization from these people. And that actually became a foundation for the wealth that we saw in different pockets of Oklahoma, including Tulsa. Oil was found in Tulsa, and Black people who owned land in Tulsa found themselves like white people who owned land in Tulsa, or Indians who had land in Tulsa, they found themselves positioned to become quite wealthy. And Tulsa, as many people might know, was one of the wealthiest cities in the United States for a time. And because of the oil wealth, and African Americans were able to build all sorts of institutions, a hospital. They were able to draw doctors and lawyers, and a hotel and modern amenities of different sorts, and a thriving, very, very affluent community. And when I first heard this about what was the so-called Black Wall Street, I'm gonna be honest, I thought that it was a myth. I mean, this is how little historians had known about it, and there's a lot to see. And I've been fascinated by the national attention on the centennial of the Tulsa sort of pogrom, if you will. But I thought it was so absurd. Even someone who has studied history, and I think I may have first heard about it probably in college, but I thought that I was like, how could something like this happen? We hear about Harlem. You hear about, other little pockets. But I was like, if I hear about Harlem, or I hear about Bronzeville, Texas, or Bronzeville, Chicago, this particular Black community, but I did not think Tulsa had the capacity for that level of influence, but it did.
All right, thank you. And I think that's perhaps part of the narrative, like you say, is the centennial celebration, and that's coming to light a lot more. We see what's happening now with Juneteenth Day, and that this is coming to light a lot more. So I just think, that's the significance of these, portions of history, some more known, some less known, than others, in particular to African-American history in this country, but now much more, it's becoming more mainstream, and it's becoming more celebratory. And so, hopefully more and more of these historical facts, incidents, the more and more will come out. So I do believe, as we're seeing here, the more we're able to share, the more we're able to discuss, the more we're able to grow as well. And so what we're looking at is how we're going to continue to build community. How can we allow community to thrive? And so, part of, a shared history and sharing the history of others and celebrations and such as part of the way for communities to grow. And more importantly, try to grow together. And so we thank you. I don't know if anyone else might have a question for Dr. Akbar while he's here.
Yeah, I do. Can you hear me, Ngozi?
Yes, we hear you, Deacon Arthur.
Dr. Akbar, my dear son, in terms of this holiday, the new holiday, and I too watched it with great glee, of Juneteenth, what is your perspective in terms of, as I had mentioned, that it is not a Black holiday, but a national holiday for all people? Could you speak a bit on that?
Yeah, so I think that I think it's really good for a national holiday to celebrate the end of slavery. To me, I don't see any downside to a country who calls itself a freedom-loving country to celebrate the moment that the most. I can't imagine anything more anti-freedom than the institution of intergenerational enslavement, right? That you would, enslave a baby at birth, and that person has no choice, regardless of how industrious he or she is, how much they believe in Jesus, how much they believe in patriotism. All they have to look forward to is that if they have any children, they too will experience enslavement and be open to all sorts of brutality and dehumanization. So I can't think of anything more anathema to democracy and freedom and justice and all the things America stands for than to celebrate the very end of the institutional slavery. So to me, it seems just as much as Independence Day, there would be something that all people could buy into. As you mentioned earlier, Frederick Douglass noted that Independence Day, what does it really mean for Black people? He said the slave, but for Black people, most Black people who are free, even on the eve of the Civil War, could not vote. So even Black people free, they were liminal citizens at best. And so the Independence Day, if a celebration for all Americans, I would see this as something for all Americans as well. And it really, I think it celebrates the possibilities of America. I mean, it really, in many ways, talks about the malleability of the American project, that the American project is not fixed, it's not static. but we can push and plot it in different directions, and those directions can be for freedom or not. But it's really what the people make of it.
I think that's an important thing for all of us to know, but also for every single one of us to be able to articulate. And I say that because I know there will be pushback that it is, a Black holiday, or why are we doing this? This doesn't make sense. Why are they pushing for this? I don't want to hear about, about this or that. I think that it is, as you had said, a malleable moment, a moment of intellectual and spiritual curiosity and dexterity and a willingness to go to the edge to uncover the truth of self. And that, the way that you put it, Dr. Okbar, I think allows us to have some intellectual and verbal and verbiage to be able to talk about why this holiday is so important.
Thank you. Agreed.
Okay. And I'll just put out one more. Does anyone else have a question for Dr. Obar?
I do.
Yeah, that's Patricia Johnson.
Yes.
Okay.
Dr. Obar, I apologize. I did not hear all of your talk, but I have a concern that I'm going to ask you to kind of speak on, and that is that while we take a celebratory approach to Juneteenth, I have a concern about the ability for us to consciously and realistically perceive what the history of our people has been. Very often gets buried in taking a series of events and leaving the part out that may shed light on what's coming next, or how we need to proceed, or how we need to look at the history. Specifically, the gap between the Emancipation Proclamation and Juneteenth, I think certainly warrants our attention and all of those kinds of things. But it's kind of like the civil rights movement. Very often people celebrate the civil rights movement as if we were finished. And we're somewhere in the middle of the process. Does that make any sense to you at all?
Yeah, I understand there's if I got this correct, that there is a continued struggle, and that one victory does not make the end of victories or struggles. No?
Correct.
I missed the question though.
Okay, so what I'm saying is, like, I'm like in my early 80s, and I'm looking back and I'm seeing the process and recognizing that what we're talking about is not an event, it's a process. I'm not sure where we exactly are in the process of creating a society, a world in America where we are able to release some of the sort of mental constrictions of, slavery and racism and that kind of thing. But I know we're not finished. And some of the celebratory approaches suggest that we are further along. And, I'm not an expert on it, but further along than I might think we are.
Okay. Yeah, I totally agree that this is a process. I have you down here as a quote, a process, not an event. And I think that as I mentioned in the talk, and I'm not sure if you're here for this part, but in many ways, the history of the Juneteenth as a moment of celebration is a history of the continued struggle for the expansion of freedom. And we're always pushing back against the boundaries of oppression in different sorts. And so since the inception of the United States, there's been a continued expansion. But to quote Frederick Douglass, power can seize nothing without a demand. And so you have people who demanded the right to vote. You have landed white males who only allowed landed white males to vote. And then 1830s, white men without land, and then all men in 1870, and then most women in 1920, and then we have restrictions and then expansions, and 1965 Voting Rights Act. So you have this sort of long process of people pushing against the boundaries. And I think that the history of this particular event is a history of just that this is a process. And I've had so many people who are on my social media saying that we need to be vigilant about voter suppression, that we need to be vigilant about the George Floyd policing law. We need to be vigilant about all these other things. And so I think this is all, I think people are, at least from my vantage, very sensitive to the issue that, like any victory, when we achieve one victory doesn't mean that there's not another one that we can foresee and we need to struggle and fight for. Thank you.
So Dr. Ogbar, I see
Thank
that.
you. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ogbar. Thank you, Patricia Johnson as well. We're just going to continue to move forward. And next we have our representative from the Greater Hartford chapter of the NAACP. And so we're going to give the floor to Tanisha Grant.
Good evening, everyone. Most of you that are watching probably are also familiar with me being a part of the Spirit Council, and also as a Simsbury Police Commissioner. So pretty much what the NAACP is about is fighting for the rights of individuals who may be discriminated against. And the Greater Hartford branch started back in, let me see, I want to say about 1917, after W.E.B. Du Bois came to Hartford and seeing the activism that was going on here in Hartford and became impressed about it. And so they end up having one of those, making Hartford the official branch. Now, the mission of the NAACP is to ensure that political, educational, and economic equality of rights of all persons, and to eliminate race-based discrimination. And we at the NAACP have several different committees that we are involved in the community as well. So one of them is the Political Action Committee. They work to increase registration and voting, work for the enactment of the municipal, state, and federal legislation designed to improve educational, political, and economic status of minority individuals. I am a part of the Women in NAACP, which is a committee that works on, I don't want to say liberating, but empowering women to be their best selves and just loving who they are as an individual. There's also our Criminal Justice Committee, where they're seeking to eliminate harsh and unfair sentencing practices that are responsible for mass incarceration and racial disparities. There's also labor industry. We also have a youth committee as well. Let's see, I want to make sure I'm not forgetting the most important stuff. Legal redress, there's a legal redress committee that investigates cases that are reported to it. They supervise all litigation in which the unit is interested in. I know that you guys may have seen the NAACP involved in trying to find out what's going on at Amazon in Windsor, Connecticut, where they were where they found about 8 nooses within like a week or two time period. And so that's one of the tasks that they're working on right there. They've also been involved in Simsbury. I want to say a couple of years ago when the blackface incident came, they were also here right around that time. And so within education, they seek to eliminate segregation and other discriminatory practices in public education. Let's see, I'm not an official person for the membership committee, but I'm here to let anyone know that if any of those committees sound interesting to you and you would like to join the NAACP, that I can put inside of the chat the link for you to be able to join to become a member of the NAACP.
All right. Thank you very much, Tanisha. That's the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. And so that is the oldest civil rights organization in the country. And so it's always the credibility that is attached to the NAACP. And so we thank you, Tanisha, just for taking the time out. And again, if anyone desires to join, to become a member, and I believe it's a $30 fee, but it is feasible and it is open to all. So we thank you, Tanisha, for all the work that you're doing as well and all the time that you're putting in. Thank you very much. Okay, so next on our agenda is a little bit of a brief, just a little panel and community discussion. And we're just answering a few questions, you know, and that's with myself, I'm Deacon Art Miller, Tanisha, Grant Lloyd Huey, myself, and Dr. Ogbar. And so, you know, the first part of our first question that we're looking at is just, are we asking the question whether or not there is a need for the celebration of Juneteenth? Is there a need to celebrate this day? And so, Lloyd, I know we have not heard from you as of this night, so I will put your name out there first if you want, you know, to have the floor first and talking about, is there a need for the celebration of Juneteenth Day?
All right. Thank you, Nkosi, and good evening, everyone. Dr. Ogbar, thanks for that great presentation. And that's a great question. And, you know, as I think about it, it's not a simple answer or straightforward answer. Off the back, I would say absolutely yes. There is a need to celebrate the fact that enslaved people in Texas were finally informed of their freedom. In addition, I would say yes, we should celebrate because it shows us that the fight for freedom and justice, while sometimes it's a hard, a difficult, and a long road, it can eventually succeed. I think it's important to remember that Juneteenth was an impactful moment in American history, and so we must do our part to help others understand what it all means. And so in addition to celebrating, I would also say we need to be reflective and informative. As a country, we should reflect on where we have been, what we've done, how we got to where we are, and what we can do to make sure that we don't get back to that place. And when I say that, I think about about 8 years after emancipation and the great great strides and progress that was made. And then 150 years after that, how much of that was lost? So we need to celebrate it. And, you know, one of my mentors in leadership, John Maxwell, he said, when there's a great victory, take 24 hours and celebrate it and then get back to work.
That's right.
And it's the same thing. He says, if there's a loss, take 24 hours to grieve that loss and then get back on the horse and get back to work. So Juneteenth reminds us of how the progress we can make and how progress made can be lost. So I would say, yes, let's celebrate, but also let's be reflective and use that to figure out where we're going, where the potholes are, and how we can use the history we have to make sure that we continue down a good path.
All right, thank you very much, Lloyd. We can celebrate and we can still be very reflective at the same time. I think it's a little bit of exactly what is happening with our discussion here this evening. Does anyone else wish to speak on the need for the celebration of Juneteenth Day?
I want to add something to what he said, and it goes back to a little bit about what Dr. Ogbar said about him knowing about Juneteenth, because in California, there are people that have come back from Texas or Louisiana. And so I think back to me and the education that I did not receive about Juneteenth and how important that is, and education on the northeastern part of the country. And so today we were at work just talking about what Juneteenth is, and having to explain to coworkers who are also adults, right, with a great education, and about what Juneteenth actually stands for. And so it starts with education at the very least, right? So we know about what happened with the 4th of July. We know about Easter. We know about all these other national holidays, federal holidays that we celebrate, Martin Luther King's Day. We know about all of that, but there isn't enough education about what Juneteenth is. And so in order for us to really be able to celebrate what that is, we need to keep this at the forefront of everyone's mind. Oh, this is what Juneteenth is. And letting our children know, letting our colleagues know, letting our neighbors know what Juneteenth actually is about, so that we can feel comfortable about celebrating our history, just as Dr. Ogbar and Deacon Art Miller said. It's our history. It's not Black history. It's not African American history. It's our history. And until we are educated to understand that, can we really truly embrace Juneteenth like we embrace Christmas, like we embrace Thanksgiving, like we embrace the 4th of July, like we embrace Easter and any other holiday that is celebrated in the United States of America.
All right. All right. Thank you, Tanisha. And we'll see. And I think that's part of it, you know, as well, Tanisha, would you speak, is how much will it be celebrated, to what depth, you know, will it be celebrated? And I think it's the word that was spoken earlier, was the word, it's part of a process, you know, that is going to be given time to grow. I like the part of acknowledging this as a holiday, because when this question was first put on paper, it was not a federal holiday as it just became today. And so I like the component of accountability, you know, that it brings, that now this is something that, you know, is on paper, you know, as well, that it's law, that this is a federal holiday. So perhaps part of the process of it becoming, of it being a federal holiday, first and foremost, is the fact that, you know, part of the process that some states may now adopt it as a state holiday. Some towns may now adopt it, or cities, as a local holiday as well. So maybe you'll see it as an opportunity for, you know, perhaps some schools will be shut down, or state workers. I believe Texas, they already do acknowledge it as part of their state. And so I think that's all part of the process. And as long as, you know, Juneteenth Day is up to be discussed, it's reflection, celebrated, then it's also, you know, a time for growth. And I think a big part is it's a time for healing, you know, as well, within the country. And so, yeah, I think it's great that it is going to be a national holiday, because I don't believe that's going to be the end of the celebration of, or how Juneteenth is celebrated. I believe that it's only going to grow. And so I like that part, that it holds our country more accountable. As Dr. King was able to recite from the Declaration of Independence, to hold the country accountable to those words that were written by Thomas Jefferson. I do believe that as a national holiday, that this is also going to be a way for the country to be held a little more accountable as well. So as injustice, as it continues to unfold, as, you know, police killings as they continue to unfold, as we still deal with, you know, issues of healthcare or issues of wealth, education disparity. This is all another, you know, now with this is something else that can be added to accountability, that is not just African Americans, you know, to protest these things, but as it becomes more of an American holiday, as we've seen, you know, in the past year, that we've seen all different types of people out in the streets protesting, all different types of people desiring for there's some sort of accountability and justice to be had. So I'm excited about it, you know, from that component as it being part of a process and something for us to celebrate now and still be able to look forward to, you know, look forward to how it will evolve and expand within the country. So I believe, yes, definitely should be celebrated. All right. I don't know, Dr. Ogbar, if you have anything you wish to add on the celebration, or Deacon Arthur, are you still with us? Yep, I see. There you go. See, the book cover is gone. All right. So,
Yeah, yeah. You know, it is. I'm so excited about this. You know, and I recognize, because I've been around for a while. I'm not in my lower 80s, but I can see them from the bottom of this hill as I approach 76. And there has to be these moments of celebration. Even the enslaved people who were wrought with debauchery and rape and ugliness found moments to celebrate, jumping over the broom. I mean, they did things, because without that, there's no waking up for tomorrow. So I am going to celebrate this, because it will, in fact, enliven my spirit to do more. And to be able to teach this to people is going to be extraordinary. To be able to teach it so that this country can begin to confront it. We have, my friends, a remarkable moment. So let's not look down. Let's not look at what we need to do. Let's do and take care of what we got right now in the midst of our poem, to teach.
all right. All right. Thank you, Deacon Arthur. Let's celebrate in the midst, jump in the broom. Hey, circumstance is never greater than the joy. I like it. Yeah. Never greater than that. Dr. Ogbar, yes?
Yeah, I just want to say that many people have said so many brilliant things already. I have nothing to add. I know it's absolutely great to hear people talk about and reflect on what this is. And so nothing to add.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ogbar. Okay, so another question that we have, there was a Vox video that I know they were watching, but it's talking about the history of Juneteenth Day, you know, speaking about the history that has come along with emancipation and many of the hardships and many of the battles that had to be fought and many of the battles that have been won. And so one of the quotes at the end is saying that celebrating Juneteenth, and again, this was done before today, before the acknowledgement of Juneteenth becoming a national holiday. But one of the questions at the end of the video, they asked, "Are we free?" Right? And so it was a question, you know, that was a profound question that says, "Are we free? Are we free today?" And so I don't know how anyone feels, you know, in answering that question. Are we free today?
Well, I'll give it a shot. I think we are as free as we exert our freedom to be. We are certainly restricted by other people's anger, other people's hatred. We are not restricted by our color, but we are restricted sometimes by how people treat us because they have a brokenness within them. I think that it was Dr. King that said that, you know, unless all of us are free, none of us are free. Well, to that extent, there's certainly different levels and layers of freedom that many people are have been restricted by. And to that extent, there is this social dynamic that one can look at in CRT, the critical race theory, that tells us that the racial and social construct of this nation is biased. So within that biasness, there's certainly moments of freedom. But I will always be restricted simply because not of the color of my skin. Because my skin, as I said, is wonderful. And I've never been biased against because I'm Black. I've never been biased against or treated poorly because I'm Black. When those things happen, and they most assuredly do, it's not because I'm Black, it's because those people do it or broken. As soon as those people are freed from their bias, from their hatred, from their brokenness, then I'll be free.
Awesome. You know, that's great, Dr. Art. And, you know, one of the things that I would also add to that is that we have lots of freedoms in this country. But at the same time, there are people who don't enjoy the same level of freedom. And for many different reasons, some of it has been psychological, some of it is mental, some of it is structural. And so we have to figure out, for those of us who have freedoms, how we leverage those freedoms to help those who don't. And at the same time, I would say we need to be careful, and I'm going to go back to what I said earlier, be very reflective, because if we're not careful, we could find ourselves in a situation where we could lose the freedoms that we do have. So we have freedoms. It's sometimes in a precarious position. So we have to be careful as we enjoy those freedoms.
All right, thank you. Still from the perspective of reflection and being able to enjoy, you know, the freedom that we have. Thank you, Lloyd. Tanisha, do you have anything you wish to add on the state of being free?
I think that's almost like a trick question, right? Or it's a loaded question.
It is very loaded.
It is loaded.
And are we free? And I'm sitting here trying to come up with a yes or no, and you can't really say a yes or no. So things that that I may have accomplished in my life, right? Because of hard work, tenacity, resilience, right? And so there are other people that you know have experienced the same types of things that I have experienced, right? Had the same opportunities that I have had, but their challenges may just be just a little bit different based on belief systems and value systems, right? And for those of them that didn't get that opportunity, it wasn't because they didn't want to. It was just because there wasn't a door open for them at that time. And so can I truly say that I'm free knowing that 30 minutes from where I live, there are children that are hungry, that there are people that are homeless, that there are people who women that are being abused by their husbands. I mean, it's just so much. And so am I truly free? Are we truly free? No, not until we look at society and there are people that have the will that can do it, but they just it's just hard for them. And no, we're not fully free, knowing that 30 minutes away from where we live, there's people that are living in the situation that they're living in. So long and short of end of it, I can't say so. I can't say that that we are, as a nation, as a country. There shouldn't be anyone in this country that goes to bed hungry. There shouldn't be anyone in this country that is homeless, because we are one of the wealthiest, one of the wealthiest nations in the world. And there's no reason why. And until we feel comfortable with helping other people who don't have or can't get because of their situation, or educating other individuals as to why their behavior is creating a negative impact on others, right? Whether it's no fault of their own, we're going to continue to not be free.
That was a loaded answer for a
Yeah.
loaded question.
Amen to that.
Very, very
Yes.
much so.
Yes.
You know, and so, yeah, I think, you know, freedom is subjective, you know. Am I free perhaps to choose an occupation, or, you know, am I free to, you know, maybe attend a college, you know? Yeah, and so in those senses, you know, we are free in that sense. But, you know, I put a but there because there's, you know, always seems like a cloud, you know, hovering over, I don't know, over the country, over the issues. I guess I was thinking about, you know, Derek Chauvin, the police officer who murdered George Floyd, and the police in the streets in Minneapolis. And like 2 hours after he's convicted, there was another police shooting, you know, 10 miles away, and someone else was killed by a police officer. And then it just, you know, I guess the point of saying that is just it doesn't stop. You know, the need to have to keep standing up, the need to have to, you know, to keep fighting, to keep pressing. I think it was stated by, you know, Dr. Ogbar a little earlier, saying that it's give and take. There's pull, a little bit of, you know, a victory here, and then someone's trying to, you know, to take it back. And so, and, you know, it pulls on the mind, it messes with my mind, you know, at times it becomes, you know, sometimes hard to deal with, overwhelming. Is this gonna end? How does this end? Can it just be, you know, do I have to think twice about where I'm going for a walk down the street? Why am I thinking twice? You know, when a police officer is searching, you know, looking for seat belts at the highway entrance, and I have my seat belt on, and he still signals for me to pull over. Then he's like, oh no, never mind. And it just messed up my day, you know, having an interaction with a police officer in that way at, you know, at 7:35 in the morning. And so even that, it's just hanging, you know, over my head. And so, yeah, it's tough. But I guess that's the part of why we have to, you know, why we celebrate, why we have to count, you know, victories. You know, I have to, you know, love on my family, my wife and my children, because of the things that are in my control, to be able to, you know, in that sense, to find fulfillment, to find, you know, that type of joy. Then, you know, it's incumbent upon me to do so. And not even to, you know, allow the issues of the world to interfere with these, you know, with the joy that is available to me, you know, right here, you know, right now, you know, in the midst of this discussion. I could look to, you know, my right, I got one son here, and, you know, other sons just took our other son out for a little walk in the stroller. And that's, you know, that's enough to put, you know, a smile, you know, on my face. It's enough to win, you know, for the moment. But yeah, the freedom, you know, for a moment, you know, you're feeling victorious, and then another moment it's like, man, you know, you gotta get up, and that's, to me, that's what this is about. People have fought before, and the fight continues. And so, you know, just trying to be a part of it is frustrating. It can be tiresome. It can be overwhelming at times. But you know, it doesn't stop. What we're fighting for is worth it. So yeah, that's a good answer from you, Tanisha. But yeah, it's a fight. It's a loaded question. It's very loaded. And yeah, sometimes we're good, and sometimes, man, not so good. So yeah, but we got to keep fighting. We got to keep fighting. That's what this comes down to. I don't know, Dr. Ogbar, I have a feeling you're a lot more eloquent than I am. I know you could put, a little bit more context to some things. So please, talk to us a little bit about, are we free, or, your perspective on it.
I don't know if I'm more eloquent or anything than anyone else here. I've heard a lot of great ideas, and I think to echo what has been said earlier, it's a very complex question. I think the first thing is philosophical in many ways, right? So, how do we define freedom? That is our premise, and then you got to go from there. So freedom means different things to different people. When I mentioned before that there's a long history in the United States of people fighting for freedom and then people fighting against freedom. I mean, you literally have people who are willing to die in their own words and their own actions, saying, I am willing to die in a pool of my own blood to defend the institution of slavery. So and for them, they explicitly see the end of slavery as the abnegation of their own freedom, right? So their freedom is defined by the unfreedom of others. And so in many ways, freedom can be incredibly subjective. If we look at even democracy and how we understand democracy now, what do we have in 2020? In the fall of 2020, in the history of the United States of America, we never had a higher number of American citizens turn out to vote, ever, right? And with that, we didn't have, wild celebrations of how vibrant our democracy is. We immediately had people who said that was a fundamental threat to our democracy. Seeing all those people come to the polls was a threat to my democracy. Seeing all those people participate in democracy, that's a threat to my democracy. Seeing all those people love freedom and exercise freedom, that was a threat to my freedom. And so in many ways, like how we define freedom, how we define democracy, these are very subjective positions, right? And so I think for many people in this call, we define freedom in a certain way that literally, and I say this by the old literal definition from Merriam-Webster, right? That literally at this moment, somewhere in the United States of America, there's a Zoom call where people are talking about how their freedoms are being eroded because people like all of us are out here organizing. And so when we talk about freedom, I like to think that, it's going to sound real crazy. This is like me right on the spot. Maybe 3 minutes from now, it's going to sound ridiculous, but we talk about beauty is in the eye of the beholder, right? So freedom is in the eye of the beholder in some ways. And so we kind of think about, I can say that we have certain freedoms that many people do not have in other parts of the world. And I've been to other parts of the world. Fortunately, I've been a lot of places, but I was in Dubai in 2017. I remember talking to some expats there who were saying, these are professors who taught at universities in Dubai, and they were saying that there were these various constrictions. So on my phone, I couldn't get certain websites because there is a limitation on access to certain information. And so there's less freedom in Dubai in many ways. Turns out, however, at the very same time, if you're in the United States, you're significantly more likely to be in prison than you are in Dubai, right? And so this is kind of interesting thing here, right? Like if you were in Dubai, you're more likely to be free from imprisonment than the United States. And so we kind of think about how we define freedom, and freedom is a very complex thing depending on how you want to define it. I mean, freedom from incarceration, freedom from being shot by the police, freedom from poverty, freedom from not having access to healthcare. There are a lot of countries like Dubai that have greater freedom if you define it by those indices. But I think that we understand the complexity of freedom, and so therein lies our problem. So when Tanisha and others sort of grapple with it, this is why I'm not sure I could offer anything more eloquent than what's been said. This is a very complex phenomenon, and I think that there's always, it's going to be contested, but there's always something worth fighting for along the lines of those people, because because it's contested, we must always engage it, right? There are going to be people out here 20 years from now mad because your children voted, and that infringed upon their freedom. As absurd as it may seem, this is what we deal with,
Right. Well, thank you, Dr. Ogbar, and talking about the subjectiveness of freedom, the philosophical view of it all. And so we thank you. So yeah, and back to what you said, it was a loaded question, and I think you could have quite a bit of discourse, talking about freedom and being free. What does it, what does it mean? And so yeah, it is a very loaded very loaded question. But it's nice to have a discussion about it, because I don't know the last time I ever tried to answer such a question. And so again, that's why I always enjoy, you know, these types of discussions, these types of events, because it does allow, you know, for dialogue, it allows for exchange of ideas, and it allows for, you know, the type of growth that is necessary, that is essential for our well-being. And so I don't know, we have a few minutes left, but I would just open. I don't know if there's anyone here in the audience that does have something. Oh, Tanisha, you got your hand up?
Well, there was a question in the chat for
Okay.
Dr. Obar, that Rick had put in, and he wanted to know if he could talk about Joe Manchin's proposed compromise on the issue of voting rights.
Okay. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I think Joe Manchin is my father-in-law is a great guy. He is a political animal, and you know, we were talking about how Democrats have an option now to push through a lot of substantive legislation, including this infrastructure bill and a series of other things that the United States really needs. You know, climate change, all sorts of stuff, right? And but we have this character that my father-in-law warned me about. He's like, yeah, we've got this cowardly, weak-kneed dude in West Virginia named Joe Manchin, right? And I've heard of Joe Manchin, of course, but he's like, Joe Manchin's gonna be this weak-kneed, cowardly, weak link in the chain, you know, spineless, you know, guy who's gonna capitulate to any semblance of resistance from the right. And sure enough, he's been all those things. And I've been, anybody who's, again, this is a very scientific measurement of the political landscape over the last six years. We do know for a fact that Republicans, when they wanted to get legislation pushed through, they were able to do so without having this bipartisan sort of support. And when we look at what happened under Obama's administration's last 2 years, not having, having the party of no, sort of just resisting everything, they were very, very clear. And in this case, I think that Joe Manchin is such a bane for progressive legislation to be passed. And I don't even know much about this compromise on voting rights right now. The little thing I heard him say is that he didn't want to support something that was not bipartisan, right? But we know for a fact, you know, Moscow Mitch wasn't concerned about bipartisan politics, right? This horrible guy from South Carolina, they weren't concerned about, bipartisan politics when they came up with issues. And so it seems to be this thing that that fully rests on, these, characters like him. And I don't know what can be done. Apparently, just very, very quickly, apparently people said that Robert Byrd, who was a conservative Democratic senator from West Virginia before, that Robert Byrd ended up being an obstacle as well. And one of the things that the Democratic Party did in order to get Robert Byrd to vote was to say, we will do things for West Virginia, right? And that if the Democrats can promise certain things for the coward Manchin, that he will then, capitulate and get on board. And what that means, what he wants, I don't know. And but I think that perhaps the best way to go is to sort of, do a little horse trading the way that LBJ was famous for, and working people around to provide this guy Manchin something that will allow him to vote in the way that his party wants him to vote. I know I shouldn't be calling people cowards, all that kind of stuff, and spineless on Zoom calls, but you can tell how I feel about this guy Manchin. It seems like it's so disappointing. I just really hope for more, and but here we are.
Thank you for answering that.
Great question, Rick. Thank you so much.
I guess we're coming towards a close, just of our program. And, again, we'd just like to just to say thank you for everyone that has taken the time to, to be a part, whether of the organizing the event, being a part of the panel, or just being in the audience. And so we're looking at, again, a legacy of resilience. And I know legacy is anything handed down from or as from an ancestor. And then when we look at resilience, you know, it's the capability of a strained body to recover its size and shape after deformation caused especially by compressive stress. Or more simply put, it's an ability to recover from it or adjust easily to misfortune or change. And so that's why always part of the reflection process of a day such as this, you know, is looking at the issues, looking at the obstacles, looking at discrimination, oppression, whatever has, you know, impacted, you know, especially in speaking of Juneteenth in a historical perspective, what has impacted African Americans and being having an equal say and having an equal opportunity in our society. So all that, nothing has been given, you know, in that sense, every inch of what has been received in this country has been earned. It has been fought for. You know, people have had to die, you know, all types of, you know, injustice, all types of hatred, all types of things that in the issues of life you don't want to have to deal with just to be able to live, because as we know, life on its own is already hard enough. And so that's why I was looking just at the resilience that has been displayed over, you know, 400 plus years, continue to be displayed, you know, within this country. So it is a legacy, the ability to fight, the ability to still smile, the ability to still have joy. One thing we kind of say is like, you don't always look like what you've been through, you know, and that's part of, you know, a resilience factor of still being able to, you know, to be well in the midst of a very, would you say, a compressive stress. And so, yeah, and so in closing, I just wanted to say we definitely would like to just take a minute to thank everyone that has given their time to organize, participate, and be in the audience for the town of Simsbury's inaugural Juneteenth Day celebration. It has been 156 years since the first Juneteenth, and it says a lot that our country has not taken the time to recognize the end of slavery in our country. Having this dialogue, having these celebrations will only bring what our country so desperately needs, and that is healing, not division. There is wholeness that comes as a result of sharing, that comes as a result of learning, and that comes as a result of growing. And as we grow as individuals, it allows for greater community, for greater growth as a community as well. Can you celebrate what I celebrate? Can you cherish what I cherish? Are you willing to feel the pain that I feel? And even if you don't feel it, are you willing to listen? You know, that this is why the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is able to say, you know, speaking about America, he says they have come to realize that their freedom is inextricably bound to our freedom, and we cannot walk alone. And now the walking alone has decreased once again with the recognition of Juneteenth Day as a federal holiday. This opens up room for dialogue. This opens up room for sharing. This opens up room for healing. This opens up room for confession, and it opens up room for repentance. Maybe the state of Connecticut is next. Maybe the town of Simsbury is next, or the city of Hartford is next to recognize Juneteenth Day as a holiday. Maybe all who profited from the institution of slavery will recognize Juneteenth Day. So resilience continues to pay off. Resilience continues to open doors. Resilience has allowed for survival. Resilience has allowed for excellence. Resilience to survive the Middle Passage. Resilience to survive the auction block. Resilience to survive the separation of families. Resilience to survive rape. Resilience to escape. Resilience to fight. Resilience to survive lynching. The excellence to establish the Black church, excellence to fight for democracy that was not always given, excellence to start newspapers, excellence to start the Negro Leagues, excellence to start historically Black colleges and universities, excellence to take down Jim Crow, and the excellence to ascend to the White House. So yes, a legacy of resilience has been passed down from generation to generation. And so now, you know, I understand the statement that says we didn't land on Plymouth Rock, Plymouth Rock landed on us. It has been a system that was designed to take humanity, a system that was designed to crush souls, and that not all people are expected to benefit from. But a legacy of resiliency says yes. And as we honor all those that came before us, and we honor those who made a way out of no way. And so that's why we celebrate, this day, Juneteenth Day. It is a time to reflect. It is a time to share. It is a time to celebrate. It is a time to heal. It is a time to learn. And of course, it is a time to grow. So, this allows for greater expectation. I know for myself, it opens up a whole new dialogue that we're able to have with the passage of Juneteenth Day as a national holiday. So it is not a small thing. Some may try to diminish it, but in the big scope of things, there's the understanding of just how major of a move forward this is for our country. And so I hope we just continue to make the most of it. And this is June 17th. Juneteenth Day is not until Saturday. So this is just a bit of I guess, an appetizer, an early kickoff. And so you still have other events that will be done throughout the weekend, more specifically on Saturday, on Juneteenth Day. So, we do take the time. I believe Holding the Door Open is having an event, was it at Schultz Park in Simsbury? Is that correct?
Yes, sorry. Sorry for my two little distractions this whole time, but this was really great. I really appreciate Spirit putting this on in the library. I really wish more Simsbury residents were on this call, to be honest. That's like the only downfall. But hopefully the more programs you guys put on, the more people will get involved. But this weekend, Saturday, I'm part of the grassroots kind of equity group that we started on Facebook called Holding the Door Open. And we put together just a very casual conversation. We didn't really make it too public, only because we weren't sure how many hoops we'd have to jump through to get it to happen. So please invite anyone that you think might be interested. It's Saturday at 1 o'clock. It's just really a conversation about Juneteenth and what it is, how, when people heard about it, and what kind of we as a community want to do in the future to celebrate this day, as well as it is kid friendly. We have a librarian coming to read a couple books to the kids and kind of talk about what Juneteenth is at their level. So if anyone can come, if anyone would like to get more involved, please don't hesitate to reach out to any of us in the group. And that's really about it. 1 o'clock at Schultz Park. You can bring, it's kind of like advertised as a little picnic. If you want to bring like a blanket, some chairs, and some food for yourself, hopefully we'll get a good turnout. So thanks.
You're muted, Nkosi.
Yep, that's 1 o'clock at Schultz Park. Thank you. I'm Nicole. And I also saw, that they're saying the schools need more programming like this. Well, this is part of the accountability component of all this, is that, as parents or whatever, members of the community, that, to be able to press, to the schools, that, hey, we would like to see, programs, we have access to the Board of Education. There's various allies in various parts of town that are willing to give an ear and that are willing, to listen. And so, yeah, so I think it becomes the accountability part, that it becomes incumbent. And if we see an area that is lacking, we see an area where there is room for improvement, then yes, it becomes incumbent to speak up on that, and to address it. If we see the issue, then we see something, see something, say something. I think that's been part of the mantra that we've had, and how we could destroy this terrorist mentality that we call racism, and and just trying to dismantle a system of white supremacy as well. And so it's going to take everyone's effort. It's going to take everyone's sacrifice. So if there's something that you see that is lacking, then hey, by any means, try to move forward and push forward in that endeavor. And I think we have allies of people who are willing, to support. And I think that's something that is becoming more and more clear at a time such as this. We're not in this fight alone in any any way. So hey, let's continue to fight. Let's continue to gather, to dialogue, and then let's find a way to be able to move together. And so that's what this is about. It's about building community. It's about adding to diversity, adding to inclusion. It's about adding to equity. It's about allowing everyone to feel safe and secure within their community, socially, politically, educationally, in any manner of freedom that has been discussed. So, we say thank you again to the Simsbury Public Library. Thank you to Lindsay for always, doing all the work behind the scenes that allow these events to take place, to the town also, and just to all of you for taking the time to join us. Yes, we always hope for a bigger audience, but we just know that this also is part of the process of growing. So we know as we continue to do these things, to plan and then to execute, that growth will occur. And so that's what we'll keep pushing for that. So Lloyd, thank you for joining us. Thank you for your input. Tanisha, thank you for joining and your input. Dr. Ogbar, thank you for your expertise, your input. Just thank you for making this a little more palatable and digestible. It's deep thought, but you make it digestible for us to be able to hear. Deacon Arthur Miller, thank you always, the glue that keeps everything together, but we thank you for joining us. Thank you for your time and your insight. Nicole, thank you also for all the work that you've done